iOS has this default rubber band or elastic scroll effect, using which we can apply an animation to incrementally space out the items as the user overscrolls the list, whether from top or the bottom. First, update the flat list with its animated version from Reanimated, as we're using animated scroll handler to keep track of the scroll's offset saved as a shared value. And scroll event throttle controls the frequency of the on-scroll event, and the value 16 means that it will emit an event every 16th of a second for 60 fps. You can change this value to adapt to your device's frame rate. For example, for 120 fps devices, the value can be 8. But lucky for us, Reanimated provides us another hook, use scroll view offset, which just requires an animated reference as a value, and it will keep track of the offset automatically, which also simplifies the code for us. Next, wrap the flat list with a view and create a reference, mainly to get the exact height of the flat list that covers the screen, as we need to subtract it from the total list height we get from on-content size change prop to get the maximum offset the list can be scrolled. Scrolling past that would mean that the user is over-scrolling from bottom. Finally, pass these data as a prop to the item component. Next, we're going to use animated style for the animation logic. Now here it's easy for us to know when user overscrolls from the top, as the offset will be in negative. But we need to subtract it with the end scroll limit or the max offset to get the equivalent value for the bottom. Lastly, division by 10 is just to get a minimal value for the spacing. It can be changed to increase or decrease the spacing. In the interpolation, the spacing will be 0 or normal as long as scroll within the limit. But as it gets past that, we increase the spacing by multiplication of the gap factor with the index. We subtract the index with the total list length to get the same result at the bottom. You can also use top property instead of translate y, which will also work the same. Finally, make sure to update the container to animated view and pass the animated style. And with this, our Reanimated implementation is done. But in case you're using Reanimated with Moti, even though for this particular example it doesn't much simplify the code, but with Moti you can use dynamic animation to manipulate the style property. We use Reanimated derived value to listen to the changes in scroll offset. While the animation logic stays the same, we apply the value using animate2 function. Make sure to replace the container view with Moti view and apply the dynamic animation to the state prop. And it's done. Though by default, Moti applies the spring effect, which also looks good. But if you don't want it or want to make it same as Reanimated only solution, we can set the type to no animation in the transition prop. Now let's see how we can apply the same animation using built-in animated APIs without any external packages. First, use animated flat list from React Native package, and to keep track of the scroll offset, we can map the value using animated event. Alternatively, you can also do it this way. Next, we're going to calculate the max offset or end scroll limit and pass these values as props to the item. In the list item, create an animated value for translation. Next, in the offset listener, we're going to use the same animation logic as earlier, but instead of interpolate, we're conditionally setting the value here. Finally, update the container to animated view and apply the animation to the style. Now before we wrap this up, here's a little tip of how we can use this together with large title header in iOS. Apply the relevant style to the navigation option and set the content inset adjustment behavior to automatic so that it automatically handles the inset padding with the header.